Hello and welcome to WMT Reviews 12 Nights of Halloween. I am Wiseman Tanofsky. Now, it just wouldn't be right to get through a series dedicated to some of the masters of horror without giving a nod to the acclaimed king of horror himself, Stephen King. With over 50 novels and over 200 short stories to his name, King is widely regarded as one of the greatest thriller writers of this generation, with many of his stories being converted into the medium of film over the years. And while the author himself may have an on-off relationship with many of his books' film adaptations, the one we're looking at today especially, they include in their number some of the best horror movies ever made. Carrie, Cujo, Children of the Corn, Misery, Pet Sematary, and The Dead Zone, to name but a few. So, which one will I be including in my first ever 12 Nights of Halloween series? Well, that would be the film which deals with something inherently wrong with the human personality. The evil side that lurks within each and every one of us, dealing with archetypes of the unconscious and showing us that dark side to spare us the horror of having to confront it directly. If you know what the director said about his film, or perchance you read the title of the video you clicked on, you'll know I'm talking about Stanley Kubrick's 1980 adaptation of The Shining, a creepy, claustrophobic and suspense-filled descent into madness, which could have even the most level-headed man questioning their own mental stability. Tackling the effects of extreme isolation on an already strained mind, The Shining gave audiences one of the most quoted movie scenes of all time, and it wasn't even in the script. So, let's take another look at this slow train to insanity. This is the WMT review of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. So, what's the story? Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, is a writer struggling for inspiration and a recovering alcoholic, who jumps at the chance to get some time away from the busy world with his wife and son, played by Shelly, Duvall and Lloyd, when he takes on the job of an off-season caretaker at the isolated Overlook Hotel. Unbeknownst to his parents, the young Danny is gifted with psychic ability, able to see things from the distant past, and even able to foresee events of the future, an ability known as shining. And through this ability, he discovers a number of restless ghosts lurking in the hotel. Before long, the family are trapped by a snowstorm, and Jack gradually becomes influenced by the supernatural presence in the hotel, descending into madness and ultimately attempting to murder his wife and son with an axe. Outwitting his crazed father in a hedge maze, Danny and his mother escape while Jack freezes to death in the sub-zero temperatures of the storm. In spite of Stephen King's initial reaction to this film, I think it's a fantastic adaptation of the story, and it was executed to great effect. The isolation of the hotel, the vast empty rooms, and the constricted corridors between them create an environment both claustrophobic and agoraphobic, the perfect setting for a cabin fever-esque meltdown. And many of the tracking shots following Danny on his big wheel make it feel like the hotel goes on forever. Like so many other great thrillers, The Shining depends on the building of suspense and the anticipation of the inevitable. For many first-time viewers, the film feels very slow. Not much happens for a very long time, and a lot of the dialogue and scenes feel unimportant and don't seem to achieve anything. But the combination of scenes like this and the application of lighting, the score, all work together to build the tension. If American Psycho was a funhouse slide into madness, The Shining is a slow and deliberate sinkhole that drags you down with no hope of escape, but no way to speed up the process and get it over with. Even the main theme of the score, that ominous dum 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 dum, it feels like the beat of a funeral march into insanity. So let's have a look at Jack himself. Now, Stephen King complained that due to Nicholson's role in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest some years earlier, the audience would be clued in from the start as to the character's descent into madness. I disagree. Jack Nicholson does not always play a maniac. The fact that he plays a psycho very well indeed, due in part to the creepy nature of his facial structure, simply makes him more perfect for this role. Nicholson plays both the crazed Jack and the homely Jack very well, from his polite and professional demeanour in his interview at the start, to scenes where he talks with Grady and other ghosts around the hotel, and even silent scenes where he simply wanders in the vastness of the hotel, and of course his final meltdown. King also said that he didn't feel like the character was portrayed as sympathetically as his novel set out. Again, I have to disagree. When Jack is stumbling around in the freezing winds in that hedge maze, I do feel sorry for him. He's lost his grip on reality, and now he's going to die wandering around in the snow. I also pity him for his descent back into alcoholism, depicted in the scene where he hallucinates and converses with a bartender following an argument with his wife. It was a great visualization of the stresses of family life dragging him back into the comfort at the bottom of a glass. As Jack becomes more and more influenced by the evil forces in the hotel, Nicholson's performance only improves. Chills still creep up my spine when he simply stands and stares out the window with that blank expression. His vicious outbursts at his wife are fantastically portrayed, and as I've said already, when it comes to the final meltdown, Nicholson portrays the psychotic monster that has overcome his character scarily well. Everything from the way he moves, his body posture, the way he holds his face, and those grins. I especially appreciate the use of mirrors and other reflective surfaces in every scene in which Jack sees or converses with a ghost in the hotel, throwing in the possibility that they may just be reflections of his own troubled mind. This of course comes to a head when the spirit of Grady appears to unlock the storeroom door, freeing Jack for a second attempt to kill his family, leaving the audience with the lone explanation that something supernatural exists within the hotel. Speaking of the family, let's have a quick look at them. Wendy is a pain in the neck. There, I said it. Duvall portrays the pandering, submissive and mousy character rather poorly. Her delivery leaves something to be desired, and I believe Kubrick cut a number of her lines from the film precisely for that reason. I think it's the voice that does it for me. Every time she speaks, I want to bury an axe in her head, especially when she's shouting hysterically between big, gawping breaths. To be honest, the lousy delivery of Duvall's character makes it surprisingly easy for me to like the young Danny Lloyd, in spite of my feelings toward child actors. He portrays his character of a young boy caught in the middle very well, and he does the creepy Tony voice very well too. It does feel like his character had a lot of his spotlight sacrificed for Nicholson's character, as in the novel it felt more focused on the boy's development, and the ghost sent Torrance after him in order to absorb his abilities into the hotel. In the film, Danny seems to act more of an anchor into sanity for his father. He tends to act saner in scenes with Danny than he does with Wendy. Of course, this doesn't change the fact that he's still going to try and kill him later, but it was a nice touch. The spirits of the Overlook Hotel are all played very well. The ominous bartender, the piercing gaze of Grady, and both of their subtle and gentle voices work very well to portray the lucrative offerings to Nicholson's character. They don't just barge in and say, "Hey Jackie, go and kill your family." They sugarcoat it. Perhaps they need to be corrected. There is a theory that Jack is a reincarnation of a previous caretaker in the hotel, contextualized by the head-scratching photo on the wall in the film's end, and by Grady's line, "You are the caretaker, you have always been the caretaker," implying that Torrance is carrying out some repetition of past events. Or it could even be that Delbert Grady, Charles Grady, and Jack Torrance are three incarnations of the same spiritual entity trapped within the walls of the Overlook. I prefer the idea that the isolation and uncomfortable feel of the hotel played upon his already strained psyche, which would already been damaged by his alcoholism and the abuse of his son in earlier years. It makes the whole film feel more natural to me. That being said, the scene in the hallway with the murdered twins remains to be one of my favourite executions of a scene in a film. I don't know where they found those girls, but please send them back. They scare me. What makes this film work for me is the use of tension. Sometimes you feel like a scene should have continued for a few more minutes, but it drops you and moves to the next scene. Some scenes freak the living daylights out of you, like the hideous corpse woman in the bath, and some scenes make you ask, "What the hell is going on?" The film sets a truly hypnotic pace. You can't look away, but you know what's coming. The presence of Danny's imaginary friend Tony also adds a supernatural element to the suspense. The ability of shining isn't really depicted as coming from Danny himself. It's more implied that Tony is the one who sees the future. After all, Danny does ask him if his dad got the job. But whether it be the use of mirrors, the ambiguous movement of objects in rooms, and the structure of the hotel itself, or the strange hallucinations that Jack and Danny see, the supernatural element of the film is well grounded in reality, and it does leave the audience wondering what was real and what was not. The movie's reception was similar to its pace. It started very slowly, it began to gain popularity across the years, and now it's recognised as one of the greatest classic thrillers of all time. The thing I found most frightening about it is how Jack's descent into madness was characterised by various subtle changes in his personality and his delivery, allowing viewers to draw comparisons to their own lives. We all snap at idiots in traffic after all. Are we all teetering on the edge of insanity? This film is another of my favourite talking points. I love discussing almost everything about it, exploring different possibilities and enjoying other people's interpretations. The slow pace can put a lot of people off, but if you think this is slow, you should watch the TV miniseries. That drags. I think this is a great little film, and it definitely deserves its reputation as a horror classic. It's so tense that your whole body is on edge just waiting to see what happens. Does it make a lot of changes to the original story? Yeah, of course it does. What adaptation doesn't? But I think the film does well to tell its own version of the story, drawing its own conclusions from the novel as audience will draw their own from the film. And for that, I'm going to award the film a respectful 8 on the Orsometer. It's a tension-filled descent into madness, and it never fails to creep the living daylights out of me. So that's an 8 on the Orsometer for Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of The Shining. I've been Wiseman Tanofsky, this has been WMT Reviews 12 Nights of Halloween. Thank you very much for listening.